listen, I know there are verses in scripture where people call upon the Lord, where God encourages people to call upon him, but you need to understand the difference between scripture and revelation. You can pick a scripture, quote it, you will be correct in a dispensation. But when God moves, that your scripture, that is a correct scripture, may not be conformed to revelation. I give you an instance, for example. When you are dealing with the subject of healing, if you study the book of Exodus 25:23, the Bible said, you shall remember the Lord your God. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy waters, and he shall remove sickness from the midst of thee. That is a scripture, and that is correct. Until today, people are serving God for him to remove sickness from their body. And when they do it, because their faith is released, God heals them. But God is no longer there. Because you don't need to serve God to be healed. That was what he told them when they left Egypt. When they moved further, the Bible came and the Bible began to speak to us from Isaiah 53. And he said, he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. By his stripes, we were healed. So we are no longer debtors to sickness. And so a man who has this revelation is superior to the man who has the first. Because while the man who has the first revelation is trying to scrub the floor in order to have fruit of the womb. And it's correct. If that's what helps your faith, that's good. But that's a lower revelation. Another man doesn't need to scrub the floor. Another man is just praising God because he has come to the realization that by his stripes, he was healed. And so when sickness trying to attack him, he will look back to the cross and say, Satan, you have no place here. So when that man is scrubbing the floor, it's an act of worship. He's not bargaining with God. While one is scrubbing the floor and is bargaining with God, Lord, give me a fruit of the womb, give me a son. Another one is scrubbing the floor and dancing and singing and praising God. Both of them are doing the same thing, but from a different level. One is doing it to receive. Another one is doing it because she has already received. So one is trying to get the solution. Another one has gone past the solution. So you need to understand the difference between scripture and revelation. Meanwhile, there is yet another who is not just looking at the cross anymore. There is another man who is functioning at another level. He said, if that same spirit that raised up Jesus from the dead dwells in your mortal body, he said he will quicken your body. He will quicken. So that man is not even trusting God for healing. He doesn't know whether sickness exists. He doesn't know. When you are talking about sickness, he can ask you, what does that mean? And you will look at him and say, are you crazy? He's in another world entirely. Where he's functioning by revelation is a realm where sickness cannot exist. Those are the kinds of dimensions that men like John G. Lake handled. And the plague that others are trusting God not to contact, when the plague touch him, the plague die. The virus touch him, the virus die. It's not something to hear and just start shouting and say, if I touch the virus, it will die. It depends on the world where you are walking in. Because when you enter revelation, revelation becomes a civilization. A man who said, that same spirit that is in me quickens my mortal body, doesn't pray for healing. That man walks in divine health. If you ask him about sickness, he will laugh at you. It's a different world entirely. So there is a difference between quoting a scripture and walking in revelation. Revelation is a spectrum. For those of you who study science, you know that this white light you see is not white. This white light you see is a combination of 7 colors. When the light passes through a spectrum, it will divide into 7. You will be shocked to see red inside this white light. You will be shocked to see green inside this white light. When you are quoting isolated scripture, it's like picking the individual lights in the spectrum. But a man who has revelation has embodied the whole light. And so if he finds you operating at a lower revelation, he knows that's what helps your faith. He will allow you. But when you want to grow, you will move from there. Because a time will come when, if you are doing kingdom business, you can't afford to waste time praying to be healed. Because there are territories you will enter that your first step will be with sickness and death. There are places God will send you to, and it will be plagued. You need to carry something that makes you live above the realm of sickness to be able to do kingdom there. If you have not come to that level of revelation, then your walk with God will be limited.